Hi, I got new hair, I got more plants. It's all exciting information. So before I start this video, I want to give some information about me. I'm Danielle. I have suffered with an eating disorder since I was 12. I'm a lot better now, thankfully, but I feel like for me personally, I think that it's just one of those things that it's always going to be harder to deal with every day. This video is going to be advice to people who have not had an eating disorder on how to write a character with an eating disorder. Very niche and specific, but obviously you know yourself better than I do. If you struggle with eating disorders of any kind, this is not the video for you. If you do struggle with it, hopefully you would know how you would want to present yourself in media, but otherwise this is for people who haven't struggled with it. So if you have struggled with it and you don't think that you're in a good place to listen to me talk openly about my own experience, about how people without an eating disorder can help represent us better, this is not the video for you. So last thing we need is for you to get hurt. So just take care of yourself, right? Now that the disclaimer is over, trigger warning, and we get started. The first thing I will say is obvious, but it does need to be said just to do your research. I say this without trying to come across as rude, but there is just so much that someone without an eating disorder would not understand, let alone someone with an eating disorder. For example, anorexia and bulimia are the most talked about, discussed eating disorders, but there are so much more. Pica, rumination, those are pretty new. Edno, spit and chew, binge eating. There's a whole bunch of different types of eating disorders. I'm just saying this because if your character is immersed in that culture, the kind of slang that people with eating disorders kind of know toward each other, there's so much research to be done about handling such a sensitive topic that while doing your research is very obvious, you can never go wrong with doing a little bit more. The second point is to talk to survivors. This is, again, seems obvious, but talking to survivors about it, you are, one, doing your research, and they could also act as a sensitivity reader for you. Then here's what I think is interesting to make your writing more believable is that there are so much nuance that survivors go through that someone without an eating disorder just wouldn't know about. This leads me on to my third point. Eating disorders aren't just not eating or making yourself sick. It is so much more. And what I mean by so much more, I'm not just talking about it's really hard, which it is to deal with, but I am talking about the little things that people with eating disorders deal with that could help make your writing more believable. For example, I use myself. I pick my lips when I'm anxious. When I'm anxious, I am tearing at it. I am doing this the whole time. I think, honestly, in my videos, you could see me doing this in some of them because when I was so ill and skinny and not healthy, my whole skin was just really dehydrated and my lips took the worst of it. So they were cracked and bleeding, and to help deal with stress, I would hide my mouth when I was eating and also pick at my skin on my lips. My point is that huge life-changing disorders change our lives way more than what is seen by outsiders. It is the little details that make up the huge picture. My fourth thing is to know how a treatment plan is made. There is a difference between a psychiatrist, a therapist, a psychologist, a counselor. Usually, someone would have at least a psychiatrist and a therapist. Counselor is optional. Psychologist, maybe. Someone might have multiple therapists, one for just one-on-one, someone for group therapy. It irks me to see authors write about characters with eating disorders and not know how in the world a hospital works. That's not even the eating disorder part. That's just like the process of how it's taken care of. It's just like fact-checking your writing. My fifth thing is that eating disorders are competitive. It sounds weird to someone without an eating disorder, but y'all with eating disorders, you know what I mean. Eating disorders are competitive, not just in the way where people are trying to compete with who's thinner and skinnier and more pretty and worthwhile, but it's also a competition of who has it worse. If you go into a kind of home where people with eating disorders are getting help, you'll see girls look at each other's plates and size each other's plates up. You could see their face kind of go flat as they think, oh, she's not sick enough. I'm guilty of it. I've thought of it myself. I've thought about it about others. Oh my gosh, even in this video, I said, I have suffered with eating disorders since I was 12. That's like a subconscious thing of me saying I've had it for 5 years, as if trying to justify that my illness is bad enough. Oh my gosh, I did not intend to roast myself. Eating disorders are a competitive illness, and you're not just competing with yourself, you're competing with others. Number 6 is that food literally consumes people's lives. And I'm not saying that people with an eating disorder don't have other hobbies. Whoa, I did not mean that. At its root core, an eating disorder is an obsession with food to the point where it is getting in the way of someone's life. Eating disorders suck. Writing it off as like just another quirk that a character has is absolutely ridiculous. And I really hope that you wouldn't do it, because that comes off as rude. Eating disorders don't just affect white teenage skinny girls who live in middle upper class. I mean, I'm right here, obviously. It's horrific. It affects all different kinds of people. And to simplify it down to a one-size-fits-all disorder is odd choice, but pop off, I guess. Again, it comes off as ignorant and sometimes offensive, and worse comes to worse, you could be doing damage. No one wants to hurt someone else, so that's why it is repeated so often. It's not just for their benefit, but for yours as well. Number 8. Eating disorders aren't pretty. Eating disorders are not pretty. I don't know how many times I have to say it. Eating disorders suck. People with bulimia losing their teeth, having constant acid reflux, people with anorexia having problems with their kidneys and with their heart, growing hair, a lot of hair everywhere because they are so cold for the lack of fat on their body. It sucks. It's not pretty. They aren't just getting sick in a toilet or refusing not to eat. It's literal body liquid, like puke, poop, spit, everything, every bodily fluid you could imagine. And it's horrific. And to avoid discussing the sort of tragedy that is an eating disorder, it is a disservice to young people who have the inkling of an eating disorder and think of it as something to be reaching for. If you're going to ignore all of my advice, please just remember this one thing. People with an eating disorder might not want to read your work, and that's okay. You might be thinking, why don't they want to read my work? I'm trying to represent them better, and in order to do that, I would need their input. True, but some survivors are just not ready to deal with consuming that type of material. Every person is on their own path in their recovery journey, and someone might not be ready to even to read your book about anorexia or bulimia. It's hard. It's hard for a survivor to read that stuff. I went through a period where I could not even hear the word eating disorder and anorexia. I could not hear those words spoken out of my mouth, spoken out of anyone else's mouth. It just sent chills down my spine, and it just reminded me of, oh crap, I'm at a table and I'm eating, and I would freeze up. Some people are very sensitive to that type of thing. Thankfully, I'm not so much anymore. People are on different spectrums, and if someone does refuse, it isn't an insult to your work. It could be just that they're trying to look out for themselves, and if you're trying to represent them better, you wouldn't want them to put themselves first before your own work. Thank you to people without an eating disorder that are going out of the way to represent us, to represent the disorder in all of its rawness and the ugliness of it, and along with the small victories that come with recovery, hopefully. Aside from that, I will say this to people who are suffering. I do hope, genuinely, that you find peace. There are so many people that have done it before, and I used to think that I would have never done it, and yet here I am, still breathing and alive at 17. Meanwhile, I thought I wouldn't live past 16. Every single small thing, every small victory is a victory enough. I'm Danielle Momrel. Thank you so much for watching. I make writing videos. I decided to go deep today, apparently. Hopefully when this goes up, I will have a blog post similar to it down below if that's more of your jam. All of my social media links are in the description. I'm active on Instagram and Twitter for the most part. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.